Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. So we're continuing where we left off, right? So we said yesterday that the firstborn are supposed to fast, right, on the eve of Passover, which I believe falls on a Monday this year. So anyway, now he gets into the reason for this, right? So he says, "V'atam zecher lenes shenitzolu mimakat bechorot." So he says the reason why they fast, the firstborn, is to remember the miracle that they were saved from the plague of the firstborn, meaning that they didn't die, right? Whatever. כתב אבי עזרי שגם בכור לאב יש ליטנות. So says this rabbi that even if you're only a firstborn from your father's side, you should fast. כמו שהייתה מכה גם בהם. So that's the way it was in Egypt, that even from the father's side, it was called firstborn, so they died. ומי הוא גדול הבית אינו צריך ליטנות. But he says the head of the household does not need to fast. Even though there was some kind of a plague there by them. We're not that stringent. Okay, interesting. So let's see Bet Yosef here. Yeah, so it says Bet Yosef, he brings a source for this. Perek Acharon, right? It's the last perek of Masechet Sofrim. Halacha Gimel, Katav Rosh, says the Rosh there, the Mordechai, also Mordechai. Perek Arbe Psachim, right? In this perek, Yesh Saad Leminhag Zeh, Yerushalmi. So he says there is a source for this custom in the Yerushalmi as well. Katav Mordechai, says Mordechai, Beshem Rabbeinu Yechiel, name of this rabbi. So he says, right, that they're allowed to eat, snacks, whatever, right? So in other words, they can't eat meals, but they can have snacks. But he says the custom is not like that, right? So the truth is they can't have anything, right? That's the bottom line. So he goes on. Katav Avi Ezri, right? Says this rabbi, Shagam Bechor Le'av Yeshto, as we said, right? That according to him, even from the father's side, if you're a firstborn, you still have to fast. Litanot ken katvu Hagot Maimon. That's what it says also in Hagot Maimon. Perek Vav katvu teshuvat Ashkenazit. Right? It says in the Maharil, the nekeva shehi bechora katvu b'sefer Agudat tzricha litanot v'raya mibitya shel paro. So he says, right, that according to this rabbi, the girls also, the females, right, who are firstborn, should also fast. And he says the source comes from Bitya, right, which was the daughter of Paro. Oh, interesting. But the custom is not like that, as far as I know. Interesting. Let's check that. In the Shulchan Aruch, we'll check, right?
Rabbi, in the liturgy, it says all that open at the womb.
What liturgy are we talking about?
In the morning liturgy, it says all that open the womb shall be mine.
I'm sorry, which liturgy?
The morning Shakrit.
Oh,
Every morning we say that.
You're
All that
talking
open.
about the biblical verses.
Yeah, well, then when we recite Shachrit in the morning, it says all that
Yeah,
open.
yeah, right. But you know, okay, well, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, as far as I mean, I've been around the block a few times, if you know what I mean. Never
Yeah.
seen any of the ladies fasting on Pesach. But let's see, right? Let's see the Shulchan Aruch what it says. Yeah, I know what you mean, but those verses are interpreted a certain way,
It was talking about breaking a kid from its back on a donkey and redeem it with all that stuff.
Right. So, okay, anyway, let's see. It's not really the source, for this custom, anyway. That's talking about a different issue. It's related to this, but not exactly the same thing. Anyway, let's see, right, what we got in the Shulchan Aruch. So says Shulchan Aruch like this, right? Habechorot mitanin me'erev Shabbat, right? So it says the firstborn they fast on erev Shabbat. Ben bechor me'ah, ben bechor be'em, right? Doesn't matter whether you're from the father's side, from the mother's side. V'yesh mi she'omer she'afilu nekeva bechor mitah, right? So there is one that says that even the females have to fast, right? So the truth is that it seems like the custom is not like that, and he says, right, and I mean hadken, the custom is not like that. That's exactly what he says here. In the name of the Maharil, yeah, so the truth is, the custom is not like that. The ladies don't fast. Otherwise, we would see them coming to the synagogue, right, to get exempted from that, from hearing the siyum. We don't see that today, that's for sure. So, yeah. But anyway, let's look at the Mishnah Berurah here, see what he says about that, about the girls. Yeah, so he doesn't really, that he doesn't really paskin which either way. He just explains the reason for it, right? So, what is the reason why the lady should fast? So, the reason he says is because in Egypt, right, the plague was also upon the girls as well. That makes sense, by the way. But as we said, right, that the custom is not like that. So, okay. So let's go on to the next piece here. So he says, another thing he mentions here, the Torah, is that if somebody is very sensitive, I guess that's the right word, so he should fast on Erev Pesach also, even though he's not a firstborn, right? That's what he's saying. Why is that? They should eat the matzot at night with fervor, right? Should have a real desire for it. Appetite, good appetite. That's what it says in Gemara. Rav Sheshat Hava Yati Betanita. That Rav Sheshat would fast, right, on that day. So it wasn't because he was a firstborn, it was because he was sensitive. Right? So the thing is like this, right? That what are we talking about here? The sensitive business. What does that mean? So what it means is like this, right? Some people are very, they have a very delicate stomach. So if they eat something, in the morning, they don't have any more appetite to eat that in the evening. So if you're one of these delicate people like this, then you should fast. That's what we're trying to say. Because we want you to eat the matzot at night with with an appetite. And by the way, what we do, even though we don't follow this custom, right? Delicate people and all this stuff, right? Today we don't see anybody who really does this, but I guess they're not delicate. I don't know. But anyway, right? What we do though is that we don't eat matzah that day, right? On Erev Pesach, we don't eat matzah in the morning, and this is the reason why. Because if you eat matzah in the morning, you won't have a desire anymore to have it in the evening. So that much we do, right? So we eat other things, but we refrain from having matzah, right, that day. Should not have any matzah. But what you can have is matzah shira, right? What does that mean? Matzah that was made with fruit juice, right, or with wine, or things like this. There are cookies also that are made like that in Israel. So that you can have. Why? Because it doesn't have the same taste as the matzot that we use for the mitzvah. So therefore, that you can have. No big deal. So that's the custom, nowadays that we have matzah shira, but the real matzah, right, that tastes, that has that special taste that we don't have on the eve of Passover. By the way, just to inform you, the Ashkenazim, they don't eat matzah the whole, like from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So 2 weeks, like they don't have matzah until the night of. They go a lot further than than the halacha. Custom is to be very stringent by them. So, but we the Sephardim, we don't do that. We just the eve of Passover we don't eat matzah, right? But otherwise, you can have matzah before. We're going to see that later on, Bezat Hashem, right? If we get to it. Okay, so that's the tour. So let's see Bet Yosef. That's the end of the chapter here. So it says here in the Bet Yosef like this. Katuba Tumat Hadeshen. It says in Tumat Hadeshen, She'im Chal Erev Pesach b'Shabbat. Right? Oh, so what happens if the eve of Passover, right, falls on Shabbat? Mit'anin b'Bechorot b'Yom HaChamishi. So as you know, right, that we don't fast on Shabbat. So if that's the case, unless it's Yom Kippur, right, that's a different story. But otherwise, we don't. So if that's the case, right, what do you do if the eve of Passover falls on Shabbat? You can't fast. So we push it up to Thursday, right? Just like we did when it comes to this year, right, with Purim. And since we couldn't fast on Shabbat, Tanit Esther, right? So we fasted on Thursday. We pushed it up to Thursday. So the same thing also here as well. So this is what they're going to do, right? If that happens. This year, by the way, it's not like that. As I said, I think it falls on a Monday, Monday night. So therefore, right, the fast will be on Monday. Okay. That's what it says also. Also the Agur, B'Shem Ma'ari Molin, all these rabbis say the same thing. Katav Achen Avi Mori Lo Yinig Ken Ela Shelo Litanot Kol Ikar. So he says, right, that my father, he says, didn't have a custom like that. Well, his custom was that if it would fall on Shabbat, they just wouldn't fast at all, they would just skip it altogether. Right? Forego the fast. Right? But the custom is not like that, right? As far as I remember, the custom is that we fast on Thursday. So we'll see. We'll go on and see. We'll see. Right. So it says, then he says, so it says, what's the reason why they would forego it altogether? Because it's only a custom, so we're not that stringent, what I mean, to push it up to Thursday, we don't go that far, what I mean? That's the whole thing. That's what he's trying to say. Okay, so let's see the Shulchan Aruch, right? And we'll see. So it says, right, Im Chal Erev Pesach b'Shabbat, if the eve of Passover falls on Shabbat, Yesh Omrim Shemit'anim Bechorot B'Yom Hay. So some say we fast on Thursday, right? V'yesh Omrim She'ena Mitanim Klal. And some say we don't fast at all, right? As we said. So says the Rama, Aval Yesh Linhog Kisva Rishona. So the Rama says, right, you should do like the first opinion, which means that you should fast on Thursday, and that's the custom today. ונוהגים כשעת בכור, האם מתענה תחת בנה, הבכור כשעדיין קטן, ואם אין האב בכור, הוא מתענה בעד בנו עד שיגדל. So another thing that the Rama says here, right? Interesting custom. He says that what about if the child is a katan, right? He's a child, so he's not big enough yet to fast. So we don't tell little children to fast. I mean, it's dangerous for them. So we wait till they're bar mitzvah. We don't tell them to fast. But he says what happens is that, right, the mother will fast for him, because there's custom like that. And if the father is not a firstborn, then the father will do it. Right, so that's what they do until he gets, to the age of fasting, and then, right, and then he does it himself. Right, so yeah, so that's what the Rama says. Interesting. But the Sfaradim, I don't think we have this custom at all. So therefore, right, if he's not yet old enough to fast, he just doesn't fast. That's it. Why should we make his mother fast? Poor lady, right? What's her sin? That she should fast. Why should she should? Right? So, doesn't whatever. But anyway, right? So yeah, it seems like the custom is that we fast on Thursday in cases like this. If I'm not mistaken, that's the custom pretty much universally today. Okay. But according, to the way the Shulchan Aruch is, set up, it seems like he's possibly like the lenient opinion, which is we shouldn't fast at all. But I don't think that's the custom today. Interesting, right? So we have to check that in a different book, maybe, and see. Yeah, we can check the Yalkut Yosef maybe, and see there, right? What the Sephardi custom is today. Do they do on Thursday or not at all?
Kavod Harav, what's the order of the Shulchan Aruch that you just said?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
What's the order you
So,
said that?
So we went over, right, these rules a while ago, if you remember.
Mm.
We discussed rules, about the Shulchan Aruch, the way it's set up. So the way it's set up here, there's two Yesh Omrim, right? So the rule is we go like the last one.
Okay. Oh, okay. So
Know what I
some
mean?
say some latter one, yeah?
Right.
Okay.
So we go like the last one. This is the rule,
Yes.
But here it seems like the custom is not like that. But let me just check to make sure. Let me take a look at Yalkut Yosef and see what he says there regarding that. I'm pretty sure that the custom is that they fast on Thursday, but you never know. Good to check. Doesn't hurt. Never hurts to check. Yeah. Because I'm not really a firstborn, so I don't really have much experience with this. So let's take a peek at that. Mhm. Right. So first of all, right, he says in Yalkut Yosef that the custom is that the girls don't fast, as we said, right? That's one thing. So regarding that, it's clear. So yeah, the Yalkut Yosef says that the truth is that they're absolved. But he says, good idea to go anyway, right, to the synagogue and just to hear the siyum. This way you can cover both bases. Yeah. So in other words, it seems like the rule holds up, right? We said in the Shulchan Aruch, it holds up. So yeah, the rule is that we go like the second opinion, right? But as we said, the Rama, you know, says that the custom is like the first opinion. So by the Ashkenazim, the custom is like the first opinion. And by the Sfaradim, the custom is like the second opinion, which is there you go. Okay, good to know. So let's go back to the Bet Yosef. We have one more to do here. So, in the tour, we talked about the guy who was very sensitive, right? That he should also fast. So, says the Bet Yosef, he brings a source for this, right? Perek Arve Psachim, it's over there in Kuf Chet Amud Aleph, right in the Gemara. וכתבו התוספות, זה תוספות there, רב ששת הווייתי בתניתא לאו דווקא אלא שומר עצמו מלאכול, אלא מהיה מקבל עליו ממש תנית כדי שיהיה נזכר ונזהר מלאכול. So he brings here Tosfot, who gives you two different ways of looking at this, right? That there was a certain rabbi, Rav Sheshat, in the Gemara, that he would fast, right? And he was, not because he was a firstborn, but because he was sensitive, he was delicate, whatever you want to call it, right? So he brings one opinion, right? The Tosfot, which says that he wasn't really like officially fasting, like some kind of official thing. He just would refrain from eating, And then he brings another opinion, which was like in other words, they would officially fast, In other words, like take on a fast, like in an official manner. By the way, that's a whole discussion in itself, that when a person takes on a fast, he's not really obligated to do so. So he has to take it on, there's he has to make like a declaration. It's all discussion. I'm not going to get into it now. We don't need to get into that right now. But anyway, right, the point is that that's what Tosfot says. So let's see what it says in the Shulchan Aruch regarding this. And we're done with this chapter. So he says, right, right? So he says, right, that the person who's very delicate, right, sensitive, whatever you want to call it, so they would also refrain, right, from eating on Erev Pesach. So, but I think most of us don't fall into this category, in other words, can you imagine, like, are you that sensitive, right? Is your stomach that sensitive that if you have some breakfast, you're not gonna have appetite to eat matzah anymore at night? We're talking about like 15 hours later, 16 hours later. I think I would have a nice appetite. I have no problem with that. But as we said, right, matzah we don't eat on that day. That's something else. We're not talking about that. But when it comes to eating in general, to have some breakfast, or have a snack, in the afternoon, have some lunch, that's okay. You're allowed to do that. That's not really a problem. But what you have to do is, you have to make sure that you give enough time that you should be hungry. When you're eating the matzot, right? You should be already hungry. You shouldn't be like full kind of or satiated. That's not a good thing. So, but if you eat, let's say I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you had lunch, around, I don't know, 2 o'clock, right? Whatever, let's say, right? Very late, even late. So, by the time you eat the matzah, it's going to be like 10 o'clock already, so that's like 8 hours. So, you're going to be pretty hungry at that time, at that point, so it's not really a problem. Unless we said, right, unless you're very sensitive, you're very delicate, that is a different story, that's, I'm not talking about that, but I don't know anybody who's that delicate, honestly. Maybe you know somebody like that. I personally don't know anybody like that, who isn't hungry after 8 hours, you know what I mean? Whatever. It seems like a little bit far-fetched. But some people are like that, they're very delicate people, very fastidious kind of people, so they're very sensitive about these things. So it is what it is, but to most people it doesn't really apply this halakha. Okay, so we're done with this chapter. Let's see where else we can go here. We still have a lot of material to do. But the question is, which chapter should we go to? Because in other words, should we go to the next chapter? Yeah, we should, because this is important stuff. So we'll just do the next chapter. This is also important. Yes, indeed. Okay, so it says here in the next chapter like this, right? The Torah says, Kol Adam asur le'echol pat misha asit l'mala. So, right, there's also another rule which they made, which says that after the 10th hour of the day, you're not allowed to have bread anymore on Erev Pesach. Right? In order that you should eat matzot with hunger, with appetite, with an appetite. But he says you're allowed to have, things like meat and vegetables and, right, and, dishes, things like this, let's say eggs, right? You're allowed to have, so what's really not allowed to have after the 10th hour? Only bread, right? So what does that mean, bread? Like, let's say you're having some, cookies, right, which are kosher for Passover, right? Or you're having some, as we said, matzah shira. So things like this, you should refrain from having that after the 10th hour, right? So what is the 10th hour? So we're talking about, right, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? After that time, you shouldn't have any more bread or, some cake or whatever, or some cookies, things like this, right? Because you won't be so hungry when it comes to eating the matzot. So you should refrain from that. That's what he's saying, right? But as we said, right, if you ate at 2 o'clock, that's okay. It's still way before the 10th hour. So you're good. Right? All the more so if you ate like 12 or 1, it's you're good. So yeah. Okay. So it says, then he brings the Rambam here. What does the Rambam say? Katav aval ochel hu me'at perot or yerakot, right? But he's allowed to eat, right, some fruit or vegetables, right? No problem with that. Even like later on, right? Towards the evening, no problem. Aval lo yimale keresomhem, right? But it says, even though you're allowed to have fruits and vegetables, let's say you want to have a banana, right? Which is kind of like filling, right? It's okay. You're allowed to have banana. But he says, don't get filled up from it. Like don't satiate yourself from bananas or whatever, fruits, things like this, right? Don't eat too much, until you're totally stuffed. That's where you're going too far. So just eat a little bit, and right. This way you'll have energy to go on until the time for the matzah comes. It'll keep you over, right, for a couple of hours. You know what I mean? That's what we're saying. Okay. Yeah. So that you're allowed to do, as we said, but don't get filled up. Right? That's not good. So it says, "V'yain mutar lishtot hen rab hen me'at." So it says, what about drinking wine? So it says you're allowed to drink as much as you want, right? Before even after the 10th hour, right? No problem. Kihu gorer ta'avat machal. So it says, why is that? So it's because really the truth is that wine makes you hungry. Drinking wine, so it's actually a good thing, Okay, interesting. It's like an appetizer, aperitif, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever they call those things, right? So it's good. Okay, good. Right? אין רב, כי הוא גורר את עבד המלאכה, אבל קודם שעת עשירית יכול לאכול פת, but it says, but before the 10th hour, as we said, right, which is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's allowed to have even cake or cookies and things like this, right? Kosher for Passover, obviously, right? Too late to eat chametz already by that time. So, ומהו הפת שאוכל chametz asur? Says, what kind of bread are we talking about? What kind of bread does he eat, right? So he says chametz is already forbidden, as we said, right? You cannot have that. It's too late. Asur, mitchilat shah chamishit. From where? From the beginning of the 5th hour, right? You're already not allowed to have chametz. So if you get up early, right, you're allowed to have chametz in the morning, for breakfast. No problem. So let's say you got up at I don't know 7 o'clock, right, for argument's sake, or 8 o'clock, right, whatever. So you got up 7, 8, whatever, or if you're really good, you get up at 6, right, whatever, or 5. You're a good person. You're right. You're right. You have the right orientation, right, in life, or oriented well. So right, if you get up that early, you could have breakfast, let's say around 9:30 in the morning with chametz, right, and then get rid of it afterwards. So that you can do. It's not really a problem. So let's say you want to make pancakes in the morning. You could do that. Right? Just make sure you finish it before the time. For the prohibition, right? Which is usually around 10:30, 11, right? In most places, God knows, right? Whatever it is, right? Something like that. To check your local calendar, right? Then you'll see what it is over there. So, yeah. It says also you're not allowed to eat matzah, as we said, right, on the eve of Passover. Because it says in Yerushalmi, "Ha'ochel matzah be'erev Pesach kepoel arusato b'beit chamid." Right? It says you're not allowed to eat, as we said, right, because matzah on Erev Pesach, because you won't have any appetite for it anymore at night. So then, what kind of bread are we talking about, right? What bread is there? What bread is there? So therefore, the only thing you can really have is matzah shira, right? As we said, that you can have. Right? What does that mean? Again, right? What is matzah shira? It's made from fruit juice, right? Or made from wine, right? Things like this. Or egg matzah, right? Egg matzah is the same thing. That's what they make here in America, right? They have egg matzah, Manischewitz, whatever, right? Any company that makes it. So you're allowed to buy that and have that on the eve of Passover before the 10th hour. No problem. It was needed with fruit juice. The Yerushalmi lo asar ela matzah sheyotzim ba belayla. So it's because Yerushalmi only forbids matzah, which has which we use at night, right? Aval matzah she'en yotzim ba belayla, but the one that we don't use at night, right? For the mitzvah, mutar leochla. You're allowed to have it, right, on that day. Ad techilat shat yud, until the beginning of the 10th hour. ואם התחיל לאכול קודם שעת יוד, ומשכה סעודתו עד הלילה, פסק הרשב"ם. So, okay, so let's first go to the Bet Yosef. We already did a lot here. Yeah, so says Bet Yosef, where's the source for this? Resh Perek Arbe Psachim, right? In Tzadik Tet Amud Bet in the Gemara, right? Samuch lemincha, right? Lo yochal adam ad techeshach. So he says, right, that at the time of mincha, don't eat anymore, right, until it gets dark, right? Don't have any, as we said, right? You're not allowed to have any bread. The samuch lemincha ketana kamar. So it's talking about mincha ketana, right? Which is like 9.5 hours, right, after sunrise. So the 10th hour, right, as we said, right, that's what we're talking about. The beginning of the 10th hour. כתב הראש סמוך למנחה קטנה 9 שעות ולמעלה, למנחה גופה 9 שעות מחצה ולמעלה, וסמוך ל9 שעות. Right, so he says, right, the Rosh, that we're talking about the beginning of the 10th hour, as we said, right? You're not allowed to have any more. Any bread. And then he says, right, that Umash Katav Rabbeinu Kol Adam, and that which Rabbeinu said, any person, every person. Right? So because why do you say every person? Because in the chapter before we talked about only firstborn, right? But here we're talking about every Jew. It's forbidden, right? No matter whether he's a man or a female, right? Male, female, or he's a firstborn or not a firstborn, it doesn't make any difference who you are. Every Jew is forbidden, right? Except children, obviously, right? Children is okay. But yeah, so we also said regarding the person who's very sensitive, right? Whatever, delicate. But here we're talking about everybody. Even though he's not a firstborn or he's not delicate, so he's not allowed to eat after the 10th hour, right? Good. So right, just to make it, here, right, midday turns out to be at this time of year in New York about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So if that's the case, right, then we have the 7th hour, the 8th hour, and the 9th hour. So we have 3 more hours, right? That's why I said at 4 o'clock, right, you're already forbidden to have at that point. That's according to New York time, but according to you guys, wherever you live, respectively, you have to look at your calendar there, right, and see what's going on there. Okay, so that's the story. Enami mishum detanya b'Gemara. This is also another thing is that it says in the Gemara, there's Braita, afilu אגריפס המלך שהיה רגיל לאכול ב9 שעות, אותו היום לא יאכל עד שתחשך. So it says even like a king, right? Like Agrippas was a king during the Second Temple, right? That he would eat, like around the 9th hour. That day, you should not eat until it gets dark, right? So the person like that. So explains Gemara, because you may have thought to say, Tisha sha'ot de Agrippas ke'arba sha'ot de dinan. You may have thought to say, right, that since he eats breakfast, at the 9th hour, right, this king, so for him it's like the 4th hour for us. It's all relative, right? Kamash Malan, it comes to teach you not so, right? It's a standard for everybody. It's the same, no matter what time you're you're accustomed to eat breakfast, right? Whatever it is, whether it's 8 a.m. or you have breakfast right at at 1 p.m. Whatever it is, right? It's all the same. Okay, good. Let's go on. So it says, פירש מוריכי, דכיוון שהיה רגיל לאכול ב9 שעות, ואפילו הכי היה רגיל לאכול לערב בשעה שבני אדם אוכלים, אם כן שפיר אוכל מצת לתיאבון כמותנו, שאנו אוכלים ב4 שעות ביום, אף על פי שממשיך סעודתו, אחר כך יהיה מותר לו לאכול בתחילת 9, כמה שמונה דאפילו הכי לא יאכל. So, in other words, he's explaining to you, right, elaborately here, he's elaborating, right, that even somebody like that, who, eats breakfast very late, so can you imagine he eats breakfast like at 3 p.m., right? He's got quite an interesting schedule there. So breakfast is at 3 p.m. and then in the evening he has dinner, So in other words, he's already hungry for dinner. But he says, nevertheless, even though he's hungry for dinner, we still say that you shouldn't eat right after the 10th hour because they made like a standard decree for everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a king or a pauper, whatever you are, right, or anything in between. Okay, that's the story, right? אפילו אחי לא יאכל, וכן פרש רשב"ם, that's what Rashbam says. וכתב רבינו כל אדם לכלול מי שרגיל לאכול ב9 שעות כמו אגריפס. So he says, right, that's why the Torah said every person, even a person who eats like, irregularly like this king used to eat, nevertheless he has to keep the rules anyway, like everybody else. Okay, so that's the end of the bit Yosef. No, there's more here. There's more. Let's see how much more we got. Yeah, there's still, there's still a lot more to finish the chapter. So Bezat Hashem, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll stop here, Bezat Hashem, and thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And we'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch, and we'll try to, Belina, finish the chapter tomorrow. There's still another half hour here. Something like that. Okay, Laila Tov, God bless you all.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
See you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem.